Hi, welcome to Quick Tips for Busy Parents. I'm Serena. I'm from Keys, which is short for Kwinana Early Years Services. And together with Miralinga and Coburn Parenting Services, we formed the Southwest Metro Parenting Service in Perth in WA, or SWAMPS for short. So I'm pleased to be bringing you our first presentation today, which is, the topic is on the language of safety, or I've called it language matters, because language does matter. So just a brief outline of the language of safety. It is an important element of the protective behaviours program, and a big part of it is around understanding that words and language do have an impact on social and emotional well-being, and also how we can use language to help keep our kids safe and to stand up for themselves, to build assertiveness, to be able to problem solve, and for clarity. And today I'm going to be focusing on clarity, particularly around following instructions. So if you'd like to know more about the language of safety, at the end of this video, you'll see a link for our programs that are coming up, and the Protective Behaviours program is the one that you want to come to. So the language of safety is based on 4 different elements. The first is the quality of the language, which is around making sure that your language is empowering, it's non-discriminatory. So think about questions to ask yourself. Does my language put myself or others down? By others, this even includes your children. So by language, I'm also referring to the tone that we use, the tone of our voice, and the words, the kinds of words we use as well. So do my words convey respect? Or do I use a lot of labels? Things like, oh, that fat woman, or, she'd be pretty if she wasn't so fat. That's a put down, example of a put down. Things like, oh, they'll never be able to do that. They're disabled, or they're too old, or those sorts of labels, the autistic kid, the bully, the one that's a bit weird. Think about, with our language, the quality of your language, how can we use that to create a safe haven at home? So a good idea is to have a rule that we use words that build up. So we have a no put down zone. So that means no name calling, no blame, no bringing up things from the past. Once it's resolved, it's resolved. Because there's a lot of put downs out in the world, and if your kids can't feel safe at home, where can they feel safe? So it's about teaching your kids to be respectful and kind to one another as well. And that leads me into, the kinds of words that we use. Do they uphold our child's right to feel safe? Do they uphold everyone's right to feel safe? Or are we using language like, oh, do that again, I'll give you something to cry about? Or I'll kill you. Those sorts of things. We make jokes about that from the past, but particularly for some personalities, that can be quite damaging as well. Am I commanding? What about in self-talk? So I'll give you an example. There's been, a lot of stuff around about standing in front of the mirror and making all these positive statements about, I'm amazing, I'm strong, I'm capable, I'm enough. And we make all these statements, but let's be honest, deep down inside, do you really believe it? Because if you don't, no amount of standing in front of the mirror and commanding yourself to believe it is going to make you believe it. By adding in one simple word, we can change that. And changing also the structure of your sentence. So if you're saying something like, oh, I can't do that, or I'll never be able to do that, get rid of the word never and change it to, I can't do that yet. So that is then, it's not so defeatist. It's actually saying to you, you have a choice. You could learn to do it, or if it's not that important, then don't. It really doesn't matter. And the advantage we have with our children is that children generally speaking, don't internalize their thoughts. They're not so good at it until they, reach maybe the ages of about 5 or 6, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, as it is with children. And so you'll hear them say things like, "Oh, Jack, you're so silly. Oh, Mary, you're amazing." And so you'll hear them, this is their self-talk. But when you hear them saying something that's putting themselves down, you can change the language around a bit for them, so that before it becomes really ingrained into their mind and into their self-belief, you can make that difference for them. Are there any unwritten rules that influence my tone or my language when I speak to my child or others? So an unwritten rule is something like, girls should be quiet, boys aren't supposed to show their feelings or cry. So we still hear in this day and age, I've still heard of an example is a teacher's aide who was with a little boy who had autism and was having a meltdown. There'd been lots of changes in that week and he was having a meltdown, and this male teacher's aide said to him, "Oh, come on, you're a boy. Grow up, don't cry. Boys don't cry." And that was this year, right? So it still happens. And but that's around that unwritten rule about boys having to be strong and brave. Or we say to girls, "Oh, gee, you're a bit loud for a girl, aren't you?" Sometimes we might speak in the tone of our voice is a bit condescending. So how do we speak to old people? Sometimes I hear people speak to old people and, here's someone that was an amazing, strong person in their youth, and their body may have grown frail, maybe their mind a little bit as well. But I still think that they deserve respect for the life they've lived, the wisdom they've gained over the years. And we, treat them a bit condescending. The same happens when we often hear this, I often hear this, and I think my ears are attuned to it because I am the child of migrants, and hearing that when someone has a very thick accent, the tone of the voice that gets used, sometimes we think that, because they've got a thick accent, that sometimes they might be a bit deaf as well. So we need to raise our voice. And it just conveys this message that you're stupid because you don't know how to speak another language, which is really ironic because all of the people I know who are migrants are usually multilingual. So it's a bit ironic to be treating them like they're stupid. So that's the quality of the language. And then we go into shared meaning. And I love this little, this picture here because this really, I think, captures the essence of shared meaning. It's like when there's a joke and everyone gets the joke, and this one person's just out of the picture and like, and you feel uncomfortable. What are they laughing at? Are they laughing about me? Or sometimes they know it's not about them. And if you have a child who's particularly sensitive and particularly compassionate, when they hear you laughing about someone else, so this fits in with the quality of your language. So they might hear you talking about another person in a real put down way or labeling because they're different. And if your child is very sensitive, they're going to feel very different. They're going to be aware that they're different. And so in their mind, when you are laughing and joking about someone else who's different, they don't feel safe. It's, well, what do you think of me then? Because I'm a bit weird, I'm a bit different. And I'm speaking, that is, I was that different child. So hearing someone make judgment on someone else was like really scary for me. It's like watching someone being bullied and then being quiet because you don't want to be the next victim, right? So having shared meaning is really important. In a nutshell, if you make a joke and it's not a joke for the other person, then it's not funny. So please respect that. That goes back to the quality. And it's okay if you have a close relationship with someone, you can make those jokes. That comes with having a good relationship. So in my family, I call my husband Skip. Now, for another Italian, and in my family, we're all Italian, and there's two of us have partners who are not Italian. They're Australian, so we call them Skip. But they love it. That is, you know, they call themselves Skip, and it's very loving. We had, we call each other Ding, which for us was a horrible put down when we were children. But we were able to turn that around and put power into that by, you know, joking around amongst ourselves. But if someone else called me a ding or a greasy wog or something, that would just bring up a lot of hurt and trauma for me. However, it's not like that for everyone. You know, my mum was 7 when she came to Australia and was labelled in that way, in horrible ways. And so she's still in her late 70s, you know, cannot, you know, we would not joke around her. So that leads me to the next thing. When you have shared meaning, just be respectful of people around you, because if they don't get the joke, it can be threatening for them. A really good example is one that I heard of a friend who in the workplace, she has a male friend and they joke around together and they have this shared meaning. She would never accept those jokes from anybody else. She knows he's a safe person and they're able to joke. But then a new person started working there, another woman, and she just doesn't know him. She started seeing him joking like that with someone who's much younger, with my friend who's younger, beautiful young woman. She herself has experienced workplace harassment because of her looks, inappropriate comments about the way she looks and everything. So, of course, she's feeling triggered and she wants to defend this other worker, thinking this other worker can't stand up for herself and is only laughing to be polite, and reports it to HR, which then causes, you can see all the complication that causes. So just being mindful of who's around, because it's not funny to some people and it can bring up a lot of trauma for them. So that's the shared meaning. And then that leads us into clarity. And that's talking about our clear speech and intention, making sure we don't make assumptions, having understanding. Now, I'm going to come back to clarity because I really want to finish up on this, because this really lends itself to how our children feel. It's quite a strong one, and it's one that will help you with discipline. I say discipline in inverted commas because discipline's often used as interchanged with the word punishment, which is also ironic because it has nothing to do with punishment. The root word for discipline means to learn, to teach, to learn. So it means to learn. You're a disciple, you're a follower, you teach. But it also talks about being self-disciplined. We use that word as well. So we learn strategies and things to keep us strong and to follow, you know, a certain way of life, or follow strategies, that kind of thing. I'm going to come back to that. I'm just going to touch on the fourth one, which is ownership. So with ownership, and again, all of these are intertwined, you know, do I take responsibility for my words and thoughts and actions, or do I blame others for the way that I feel? And again, a great example of how powerful words are, when we tell our children off for having a tantrum, for being upset about something, and we tell them to pull it together, essentially what we're doing is we're asking them to manage their feelings, which is good, except for if your child hasn't really learned how to do that yet. It's like asking a baby who's still crawling to run across the room, right? But that's a whole nother topic. So that's about emotional regulation, and there will be more clips on that, I'm sure. But I wanted to focus on the fact that we're asking them to manage their feelings. Yet we will often say, as adults, I'm angry because you did that. You made me angry. So when we say you made me angry, or you make me so mad, or you make me feel sad, see how we're giving away our power to a 2-year-old. We're giving away our ability to regulate our emotions to somebody else. But it's ours. My emotions are mine. Emotions are a choice. Let me rephrase that. The emotion's not the choice. What I do with those emotions and the feelings that come out of that emotion, what I do with that, how I interpret them, and then how I choose to act upon those emotions, they're all a choice. Okay. So do I blame others? Or for how I'm feeling or how I behaved? You know, I shouted at you, but, you know, if you'd listened to me the first time, I wouldn't have to shout. Do I use victim language? Excuse me. Do I use victim language? No, good things never happen to me. I should have expected that this would happen. You know, or when bad things happen or things that are, you know, not so good or things don't go your way, do we use that victim language and blame other people and it's, you know, or do we take responsibility and think, okay, what can I learn from this? Could I have done something different? Maybe not. Maybe you couldn't. But are you willing to at least look at it? What about when you have an altercation or argument with somebody else? Do you look at your own side of it? Because it takes two. And it's never one person's fault completely, right? So we all interpret things in different ways, which takes me back to clarity, okay? So clarity is, you know, it comes from shared meaning. It means that we can disagree without fighting. You know, my hubby and I will often have arguments and people think it's, oh, gee, you know, what's going on with you guys? But we're good. It's done. And it's funny because he was never like that. But I'm Italian. And the first time he came over to my home, not long after that, he said, oh, I really don't like hanging out with your family. They're fighting all the time. Now, if you've ever been around an Italian family, you know what I mean. There's lots of this going on and raised voices and lots of expressions, right? And very firm, sharp voices as well. But then it's done, it's dusted. You know, we sit down, okay, yep, what's next? So because there's shared meaning, we know that there's love, we know that there's acceptance, we know we don't take it personally, but I would never do that in the workplace or with someone else, unless there was another Italian, in which case I have, right? Because we have the shared meaning, but then we're careful. I once called one of my Italian work names a name that might come across as a put down to someone else, but between us, we had that shared meaning. But I wasn't very smart because someone overheard and then didn't feel, oh, that's a bit not okay. So I had to clarify that for her, that, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have used that language in front of you. We are sort of like, you know, we have the same culture, so we go with that. It's a bit of fun to the day. Assuming's a big one. You know, we assume that our children clearly understand what we're saying. And there's so many different personality styles that we all interpret things in different ways. So a big tip, never ask your child, now, do you understand what I just asked you to do? Because they're going to say yes. Either because they want to please you or either because they think they've understood. And then they're going to do possibly the complete opposite of what you've told them to do. So they know they didn't. Don't assume. Ask them. Another way is, can you tell me in your words, or can you tell me what it was that I asked you to do? That's where you can check their understanding, okay, and clarifying them. Also, with our speech and intention, when you ask your child to do something, if they don't have a choice, don't put a question mark on the end of the sentence. All right, so now this can be really hard because you don't want to be commanding. So it could be, oh, it's time to have a shower now. 5 minutes. All right, now it's time to have a shower. So you're being gentle in your tone, right? Or you might ask them a question, but it's a choice between two things. Would you like to have your shower this morning or tonight? Or would you like to have your bath before dinner or after dinner? So I'm not asking them if they'd like to have a bath. I'm asking them when they want to have it. So there's a non-negotiable in there. And it's actually really good when we're speaking with our children to give them those choices as much as possible, because our children have no choice and control in so many aspects of their lives. And the more out of control a child feels, the more likely you're going to have difficulties with toileting, eating, and sleeping. because they're the three things you can't force your child to do, right? You can put them in front of the table, but you can't make them swallow. You can sit them on the toilet, you can't make anything happen. And you can put them in bed and you can't make them go to sleep. They're the things that they need to take control over. So as much as possible during the day, for their own mental health and well-being, it also builds resilience, it builds problem-solving skills and their thought processes and their language is giving them choices between things that don't matter to you or the things that possibly shouldn't matter. So that's where we need to ask ourselves, does this really matter? Why? So making sure that we have clarity. And for relationships in general, assuming, if you've been offended by something that someone has said, instead of focusing on the words, maybe focus on the character of that person. What did they really mean? And maybe ask them. Because a lot of people, especially people who are on the spectrum and neurodiverse people, say things that can come across as being really blunt or, whoa, that can sound really rude, but their heart's not there at all. So ask, gee, that not quite sure I understood what you meant by that. Can you say that in a different way? And if you were offended, maybe say, well, it sounded a little bit like you were saying this, but I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't do that. So can you explain that? Can you see how great that would be for a relationship? Imagine how that would be for you if you said something and were totally unaware that someone was offended, that they came and they asked you, because what they're doing is they're giving you the benefit of the doubt. So let's do that with our kids as well. Because our kids don't, that when we're stressed, all of us do it. We speak and we say things that we don't really mean. What do we really mean by that? And try and step outside of yourself and into your child's and see the world from their perspective when they say certain things, rather than taking it personally and being upset by it, and then clarifying it and maybe even helping them to reword it if it's necessary. All right, so that's just a brief overview of the language of safety. Thank you so much for sitting in and listening. Your feedback really does matter to us. So please click on the feedback link. I promise it won't take long. There's probably about 3 or 4 questions that are very short yes and no questions. If you're interested in finding out more about our workshops, there's an email address there for you, or you can click onto the link there and see our current term calendar, which is the term 3 calendar, but very soon that'll be updated to the term 4 calendar. If you'd like to know more about the Protective Behaviours program that we deliver here at Keys, it's a 3-week program. We go quite in depth because the focus is on building resilience and problem-solving skills and mental health, positive mental health, all those sorts of things, which is what leads to children being safe and being able to spot when something is not safe and know where to go to get help. So if you'd like to know more about that, click on that link as well. And hopefully we'll see you at the next one. Thank you.